Shout. We were only 7 together every night. Pull up, you're not 7 with you.
Hi, hello, and welcome to another Army Finance 101 video with your host, Yami. This is supposed to be a Q&A for basically everything related to big hit HYBE and all of their recent acquisitions and mergers and business moves, because I saw a lot of questions on Twitter and I wanted to be able to explain my perspective and hopefully have a deeper conversation with you guys about these topics. So basically, I love Big Hit. I love what they stand for. I love their business strategy, and I love the way that they're slowly taking over the world. So if you're here to watch me explain why they're so amazing, thank you for spending time with me. And hopefully you'll learn something from this video. In terms of the formatting, we're going to change this up from the last video I made, Army Finance 101, where I talked about why iHeart is a hot mess, simply because I'm used to teaching people in front of a big whiteboard and doodling all over it, or having a big PowerPoint in a room where I can run around and basically be part of the prop to teach people. So the video I made last time was fun, but it was a little bit strenuous on me. So hopefully this video will be easier to convey what I'm trying to convey. I did ask you guys if you were interested in a Q&A, but as I looked through your questions, I realized I couldn't answer them fully until I walked you through the building blocks that make up Big Hit, HYBE, and basically the entire music industry. So I'll do this first, and then after that, I'll do the Q&A, and hopefully by that point, you'll have a better understanding of what all of this is, and then you'll better understand my answers, and yeah, hopefully that'll help. One caveat, though, is that I don't speak Korean, much to my everlasting regret, and most of the real documentation that I'd love to see is only available in Korean. So I've had to make do with either fan translations or online articles, and in the process rely on other people's interpretation of something. So it's a bit more difficult for me to be 100% certain that I am getting it correctly. So I'll let you know when I'm feeling a bit iffy, and yeah, we'll go from there. All right, ready? Okay, so in order for you to understand where Big Hit is today, or HYBE, whatever, I need to take you all the way back to the beginning. I need to walk you through, from the very start, everything that's happened, and give you a deeper appreciation for why what they're doing now is so cool. So here is my hypothetical example. In this example, you, me, and Bing PDNM have started a business, and we've decided we want to make a living through music. So to make money, we basically only have two options as a business. We can sell a physical good to people, or we can sell them a service. Preferably both. But how do we apply that to our dream of making music for a living? So how can I make money through music? Well, you can make music, in which case you are an artist, whether it's you're a recording artist and a singer, or you're a producer or a sound engineer or an instrumentalist. That's just the word I decided to use. You play an instrument. Hopefully I got that right. Or you're a songwriter, or you're a dancer or a choreographer, or a myriad other endless list of things that you could possibly be in terms of creating music. Then you can manage musicians, which is what a talent agency does, where you basically take care of the artist and help them find gigs and help them basically get connected to everyone they need to connect to and facilitate them making music. then you can sell music, which is what a music label does, in the form of finding artists that they think are promising and using their idea of what is popular or would be popular in the market. They print albums, produce albums. They manufacture albums for that artist and make money in the process. Or you can distribute music. And the example I'm using here is a music streaming platform like all the big ones we know, Spotify, Apple Music. I don't know any other platforms. iTunes, that's the same thing. Never mind. And you basically host music in a convenient place on your website or your app. And because people can listen to it through you, you get a chunk of the change that artists earn through royalties. Okay, so those are the four main ways, four of, I guess, the only ways that you can make money through music. And so essentially, this is all an ecosystem where musicians collaborate with other musicians. They make music. They use the help of an agent or a manager to perform live, or they connect with music labels to sign a deal and get their music released in albums and promoted, which is then made available on streaming platforms so that it is more convenient for people around the world to discover an artist's work, listen to it, become a fan, and become invested in future content. This is, in other words, the music industry. Each part of the process is necessary, but the more organizations you involve, the more expensive it gets, because every part of the ecosystem wants to make as much money as possible by doing their job. But what if we could do it all? What if we could make the music, manage the musicians, then sell the music and distribute it on platforms? Well, congratulations. You've just created a K-pop entertainment company. So yay, congrats to us. So basically, the typical structure for how a K-pop entertainment agency works is that money is made through artists. So it is made through selling music and earning royalties on that music being streamed on music platforms. It is made by selling merch related to the artist, their music, their concepts, and basically any other intellectual property associated with that artist. And 3, it is made through concert tickets, with the implication being that the bigger the concert venue, the more people can attend, and therefore the more revenue can be earned off tickets sold. So basically, the main driver for all of this is the artist, which makes sense, right? So how does an artist drive all of this? So the artist makes money through these 3 main activities we just outlined by splitting their own activities between 2 categories: content creation and promotion. In the best case scenario, the artist is churning out music at lightning speed, having a blast filming content, learning choreo overnight, barely breaking a sweat, performing at concerts and shows, flawlessly preparing and executing every interview, never having a scandal or a controversy in any part of the world. Everything is just perfect, right? No one has any problems. The company just continues to grow and grow and grow. But, I mean, what happens if the artist gets sick, is tired, or gets writer's block, or makes a mistake, or gets injured, or just wants a break? Well, in that case, the artists just can't perform at the same level that they had before. They can't make the music they need to make as fast as possible. Or maybe it's not as good as what they'd made before. They can't film the music video without the music. Or maybe if they did have the music and they could film, but they just couldn't get the choreo down fast enough and it doesn't look as good in the music video as they'd hoped. Maybe during the course of a concert tour, after they'd been traveling so much, they fall ill or they get injured or they just can't perform like they were doing before. Or, maybe they're just going through a bad mental health period in their life and can't be as creative or energetic or happy as they were before. So, if you have a company structured like this, you end up being entirely reliant on your artists to drive the entire business, to make money and support all of your staff, who are in turn depending on their salaries to support their own families. Because all of those staff, the producers, and the other musicians that are working with your artists to make the music, the stylists who plan the looks, the directors who film the music videos, the technicians who operate all the machinery during shoots and at concerts, the production crew who designs the concert and all of its logistics, the backup dancers, the choreographer, the publicists, the creative directors, the managers in charge of the artist day-to-day. All of them rely on the artist to drive the entire organization forward by creating the content and promoting it. And then also, in an ideal world, you'd hope to try and balance this pressure between your artists equally, right? But it doesn't always work out like that, unfortunately. Sometimes you have one artist or one group that is more successful than the others for whatever reason. And in turn, that successful artist or group ends up bearing more of the burden than the others. We have some examples of that, don't we? Or sometimes you only have one artist or group, which is especially true for a small label or a new label. In essence, this structure ends up putting a lot of pressure on the artists. And it is inevitably unsustainable. Because in order to keep this business going, you are asking for one artist or one group to be superhuman and never get sick, never have a bad day, always execute everything perfectly. And to do all of this knowing that if they screw up, the livelihoods of everyone they know and work with in their company is on the line. What happens if anything goes wrong for the artist? What happens if anything goes wrong in the world? What happens if there is a global pandemic? What happens if a certain country or industry boycotts your artists and business for political or commercial reasons? The structure has too much risk in it. Essentially, it is a house of cards waiting for either the artist to collapse or the business itself to make a wrong move and self-destruct. And in essence, this is what Big Hit said in their corporate briefing for the first quarter of 2020, where Lenzo Yoon, I believe he's the global CEO, something like that. He literally said in the briefing, when the artists are directly involved in more activities and projects, their health and quality of the content are bound to be compromised. Such an environment is not sustainable for artists or the company. Everything I just explained to you is exactly what Big Hit already knows. You can't build a forever growing successful business off the backs of one artist or a group of artists. You just can't. We're humans. So, going back to our example. In this example of the business that you, me, and Bang PDNM started, our new label would have to grow by putting all of our efforts into supporting our single artist group. I don't know if you've heard of them, but they're the 7-member group called BTS. So yeah, in this context, is there a way that we can simplify this and make it just a bit easier on our artist? So I don't know if you can see, but the bottom thing on each of these categories is highlighted purple, because essentially what we can do is we can merge these two activities and create a third category where essentially we combine these activities from both categories and we kill two birds with one stone. and in the process make our artists' workload just a little bit easier. Because the question is are there things that we could have our artists do to generate content and self-promote that wouldn't be as difficult for them to do? And yeah, there are actually a bunch of things that we can do, and here's just a couple of ideas. Bon voyage. How about a travel vlog show where we send BTS on vacation around the world and film them relaxing and having fun? Or BTS Run. How about a variety show where we film them playing games and being silly and having fun together? How about they create vlogs about their musical journey to help them de-stress, get their thoughts in order, and connect more personally with their fans? Can we film them designing their own personal characters and then have a merch line with those characters on their own? What if we create digital scrapbooks and record what they're already doing so fans can feel even closer, like they're a part of the experience? I mean, the answer is yes, you can do that, and you can have very successful endeavors in doing so. Suddenly, by investing and working on all of these side projects, the risk of our business going under has decreased because we've decreased the pressure on the artist. If our artist can't make music or promote the way they normally would, that's okay. They can take the time they need because we have a backlog of content that we can release and earn money from. Fans will still have plenty of content to be entertained by, and which will make them feel like they're learning more and getting closer to their artist. But best of all, BTS doesn't have to work around the clock like robots. They have a little more breathing room to be human and to be more thoughtful in their creative process. By the way, I realized I never explained what content creation and promotion actually is. I figured you guys have read it on the screen already, but content creation is making music. It's filming the music videos. It's filming album-related content like posters and photo cards. It's learning and practicing choreography. It's rehearsing and preparing to and performing at a concert or a tour. It's designing merch and then creating it. And then the promotion is what we all know from comebacks. It's media interviews and appearances. It's when they go to music shows. It's when they do year-end award show performances. I mean, like, we know this spiel. Like it happens over and over again for BTS. So we're all very familiar with all the aspects of the things they do, right? God, it must be exhausting. All right. So basically, here's the structure. Here's what our hypothetical company has decided to do. By the way, I don't know if you've noticed, but we've named our company. We've named it Big Hit. So yeah, all right. A couple years go by. We grow our business using this model. BTS explode. They're doing great. Okay, you all know the spiel. You know what happens. So, all right. It is 2019. It's been a couple years, and BTS are now the biggest boy band in the entire world. They have tens of millions of fans who support them anywhere they go, who buy out merch, and also randomly buy out unintentionally promoted products in like hours. And yeah, understandably, the pressure on our dear 7 men to be impressive is larger than ever. And even if they love music and they love being able to connect with so many people, they love to perform in arenas and stadiums around the world, they are still human and they still get tired. They get worn down. They worry if they'll be able to do this much longer, especially considering how quickly they've risen to such astronomical heights of fame, success, wealth, adoration. So you, me, in this example, you, me, and Bang PD Nim are doing all we can to support them in any way. But again, there's only so much you can do. Humans are not machines. And creative humans, who are artists, who tap into their inner psyches to craft beautiful music that touch people around the world, they cannot do the same thing over and over again forever. And they're even more sensitive. So we need to take the pressure off of BTS. And that is exactly what Big Hit did. And I think this all started in 2019, where they started acquiring a whole bunch of different labels. So in our example, you, me, and Bing, Pete, and Im have a meeting. We decide we need more artists to help lessen the burden on our dear BTS. But our expertise, if you can call it that, is only in boy groups. And we're not even sure we could ever recreate the kind of worldwide phenomenon that BTS is. So what can we do? Well, our company has made some money over the last couple years, so we can afford to make some expensive decisions. First, TXT. Let's debut another boy group. Let's target this one at a younger demographic than BTS so that another generation can grow up with their own idol group. Source Music. Since we have no experience with girl groups, let's acquire another label which has a solid girl group already and who supports our vision for artists and what they stand for. Let's piggyback off Source Music's female trainees, their experience making music from a female perspective, and let's put our creative heads together so we can be even more innovative going forward and expand our company, which is actually what they did. I don't know if you guys ever noticed, but GFriend, their new music, Bang Pete and Im helped make some of their songs. I know this because my husband is a buddy. He fell down that rabbit hole after becoming an army. So he's, what do you call it if you're a buddy army? Army bud? Well, anyway, that's what he is. And he looked at the song credits for Source Music and saw that Bing Pete and Im was like on a bunch of songs. So that was pretty cool. Anyway, back to this example. All right, Pledis. Here's another label that supports their artists in a way that aligns with our values. They have several established artists who have a proven track record of solid performance, and they also have an established fan base. Let's acquire them too. Cause Entertainment. Cause Entertainment, from what I read, is just basically one artist who just shot to fame, Zico, and started his own label. So good for him. But yeah, so another rising star of an artist who's very innovative and is an entrepreneur. Let's acquire him too. And then the last one is B-Lift Lab, which is actually a joint venture between us, Big Hit, and mega entertainment giant in South Korea, CJ E&M, which you might know them as the company that runs Mama, the award show every year. Anyway, we're going to work with them. We're going to debut a new boy band together after a televised idol elimination show called Island. I don't know if you guys know it. And yeah, after that, we'll debut them and we'll call that group HYBE, if you've heard of them. How are they doing, by the way? I think they're doing well. I think they're very popular in Japan, but I'm not really sure of any of the details. In addition to all the music that these groups and their labels will be making, let's create a new infrastructure that can help fans connect with all of the other fans under the umbrella and maybe help fans discover new artists in the process. Weverse. Honestly speaking, Weverse is a brilliant business idea, even if I personally don't like to use the social side of it. From a business perspective, it's really smart. I'll tell you why. One, it creates a social media platform that the company controls and can hopefully make safer and more enjoyable for fans and artists alike. Because, when you use existing social media apps like Twitter or Facebook or Instagram or TikTok, there is a lot of hate and insanity and stupidity that comes along with the good parts of engaging with the fandom and the artist. And there's not much that Big Hit can do, or any label can do, like except report a tweet or like report it to Twitter, for example. And they don't, I don't even know if they do that. Because if you report someone, don't they see that you've been reported by so-and-so? So like, if you were an auntie and you got reported by the BTS Twitter account, wouldn't you screenshot that and like, I don't know, hang it up in your house, like frame it and hang it up, be like, wow, look at me, I got the attention of this group and they banned or like they reported me. Oh, yeah. No, I don't know how any of that works. But yeah, so the idea is that Weverse gives them more control over that, ostensibly. I really don't use that social side of Weverse anymore, so someone will have to tell me if that's actually working. But yeah, okay. But beyond that, too, it lets Big Hit know the demographics of their fans, right? Because you have to register and create an account to use that, right? And so it tells Big Hit where you are in the world, what language you speak, and what content interests you, because your one account can subscribe to BTS and any other artist that's on there. So it essentially lets Big Hit study the overlap between artists, and if you purchase certain content or you look at other stuff, like all of that is data that Big Hit get and can understand, like, well, hey, we made this type of content. Does this interest people? Right? Because you can buy things on there, like in the Soup or the docuseries, the like fan club membership. I don't know what else you can get on there. Merch. Yeah. So it literally lets Big Hit understand, like, how good are we doing? What do people like? What do they not like? And is there a relationship between that and where they are in the world? So it helps them understand that and adjust their business strategy accordingly. Another thing it does is it lets Big Hit host media content and give them an idea of how popular it is, which is what I was just trying to get at. And instead of having to pay like a third party to host it, like VLive or YouTube, it's just all directly on, because when you host things on some other platform, that platform wants money. They want you to pay them. So if you host it on your own platform, you don't have to pay anyone. You just get to earn the money. 4, and it lets you market merch to fans directly and instantly. You don't have to wait. If you're Big Hit, you don't have to wait anymore for a retailer or a third-party site to provide you with like analytics of how popular some of your merch items were, what people gravitated toward more, what people put in their cart before like buying it, or how long something was in their cart, where the demand is, like what do you need to supply more of in the future. There's usually like a lag if you use a third-party site between like them calculating all those statistics and giving it to you, and plus you need to probably pay them something to get the statistics, versus when it's your own software, you can just have it instantly. So yeah, so what that means is that Big Hit gets that data in real time for cheaper, and they can adjust their logistics accordingly. They can restock faster. They can get a better idea of where there's a large demand for their products in the world, and where they need to work on making shipping logistics cheaper and easier. I'm looking at you, Big Hit. Make it cheaper to send to the US, please. I'm tired of paying like $15 to $25 for shipping. And I know some of my army friends on Twitter have to pay a ridiculous amount of money to get things in Europe. It's just, by the way, I know they're working on this, and we'll talk about it later in this, but yeah, it's just, it's insane. And it's also insane how quickly we sell everything out. Literally, I get the notification that there's like a merch sale in Weverse shop. Like, I open it, it's maybe been 2 minutes since I got the notification. There's things already sold out, and it's usually the best shit, like the shit I want. So, thanks, armies. I understand though. But yeah, so I do think all of that is very helpful for Big Hit. Oh, and by the way, Weverse at this point in time is the Weverse and Weverse shop is operated by Benix. And this will become important later, but yeah, but that's basically like the subsidiary under Big Hit that's just specializing in IT platforms and payment, all that stuff. It's actually very complicated to figure out how you can have a store, an online store that will take money from people anywhere in the world, paying in any currency, and will convert it into the currency that your own like currency from your country, and so that you can make sure you're making enough money off of it. Anyway, back to this. All right, so at this point in time, here is our company structure. We have the label side and the business side. The label side is all of our music labels, self-explanatory. The business side is basically all of the services that all the labels need for their artists. So you've collected people who are going to specialize in concerts and fan meetings. That would be Big Hit 360. Big Hit IP is going to specialize in merch, in shows, in like all the stuff that they make. That's Big Hit IP. Ben X, like I said, is in charge of Weavers. And Superb is the like joint venture that they started to focus on mobile games. I forget who they started it with, but that's the where BTS World comes from and all that stuff. It's just like basically a collection of people who are just experts in something, and that's all they do. So anyway, so this was their structure at that point in time, which was like 2019. Yeah, so in the meantime, our lovely 7 men of BTS, we're still trying to reduce the workload and the burden and the pressure on them. So what are other side projects that we can expand to create content that is outside of them? I mean, look at this. All of this stuff has been incredibly rewarding, right? To watch or to have, like In the Soup. We all got fucking loved In the Soup. You have Tiny Tan, Learn Korean with BTS. I have that, by the way. I still haven't opened it. I will learn Korean one day. Oh God, one day. I just need the time. Anyway, then you have the docuseries, right? Burn the Stage, Bring the Soul, Break the Silence. And the thing is like they're already going to the concerts and doing all that anyway. So it's only a little bit more work to turn it into a docuseries. They're already filming everything. Well, I guess they're filming it for this and for Memories, but like it's they're already there. They didn't have to travel somewhere extra. They just get sat down a little bit more often and get asked, how are you feeling? What are your thoughts on X, Y, and Z? Which I would argue is good for them. It helps them sort their thoughts and understand for them. It's like kind of a little bit like therapy. But yeah, okay. So there's that. Then there's the partnership they did with Samsung that got them the Samsung phone and the earbuds, which I have. I love these things. They're amazing. Anyway, we got more rollout of what makes up BT21 universe, and which is literally just BTS sitting in a room shooting the shit and coming up with like random stories on the fly. So that's easy. The graphic lyric books, which I saw were absolutely beautiful. That doesn't require BTS to do anything extra. That's already done. The lyrics exist. Somebody else came up with with like the illustrations. And then you have the games, which just already exist, and don't like when you play the games, you're not calling up. Unfortunately, you're not calling up BTS, and they're not answering the phone to talk to you. You are working with a pre-recorded sound or audio recording or video recording, so BTS doesn't have to do any additional work for that as well. So all of this is absolutely perfect to ease the burden off of them. Plus, it's fun, right? It's always fun to have something new. Anyway, we're still not done. Big Hit started to get wild in 2020. So in June of 2020, Big Hit started a partnership with Keysway, which we all know because they've been the ones in charge of all of the live streamed concerts that we've had in 2020, which was the Bing Bang Conda Live, Map the Soul 1, and the New Year's Live. It's very interesting. I read up on like Keysway. Keysway is just like a New Jersey based company that used to live stream more like sports games for people. But the thing is like, imagine the demand to watch a sports game and the demand to watch a BTS concert or watch any K-pop concert, really. Like, this is where the money is. The amount of money, unfortunately, that we're willing to spend on a ticket to see a concert is a lot more than I think people would be willing to spend on a ticket to see a live stream sports match. But anyway, so they met, started a partnership. We're reaping the benefits of it now. And also they started working on a joint venture called Venue Live, which I will come back and talk about more a little bit later. All right. So many plans and not enough money to fund it all. Let's go public. And in case anyone's wondering, the reason you go public is because you just instantly make so much more money that you can spend on what you want. In October of 2020, Big Hit went public in order to obtain more money to fund all of its endeavors. So what this looked like at that time is you have Big Hit, you have all of the music labels that roll up underneath it. And by the way, these percentages of ownership, they're not percentages of ownership, they're just like, don't worry about it. There's an accounting reason it says 100%, but it doesn't really matter. So don't worry about it. Anyone who knows corporate accounting will just know that if you are the majority stakeholder, you get to roll up 100% of that company's assets and liabilities, even if you don't have 100% ownership. But it doesn't matter if you don't understand what I just said. It literally doesn't. If it does, I'll come back and explain this in another video. Okay, and then you have B-Lift on the side, which is the joint venture that Big Hit did with CJE&M. And the I correct this in a later slide, but the percentages are more like 49, 48, and 52, something like that percentage. So it doesn't really matter. And then in terms of who owns this company, okay, so bad luck, you and me have we don't have enough money to buy as much share as Bang PD did. So we've just become part of the public. Essentially, they issued 7.1 million shares. Bang PD took 3 million of that. BTS took like almost 500K worth of shares, and the rest went to the public. So 3.6 million. I'll go into the details of this in a minute, but first, let's talk about how does an IPO work? So an IPO stands for Initial Public Offering. And essentially, when a private company decides it wants to go public, it hires an investment bank to value the company, gauge the market and the demand for that company's shares, and then eventually settle on an IPO price for each share. So it is important that the investment bank is as accurate as possible in setting this IPO price because the investment bank is the intermediary in this whole process. And what that means is that when it comes time to execute the IPO, it is the investment bank that buys the shares from the company first before turning around and selling it to the public. So it's important for the investment bank to value it correctly so it can be sure to make money off selling the shares to the public. So in this example, you have an investment bank buying the shares from the public company at $100 a share. And then when the IPO is established, executed, the demand in the market immediately drops for whatever reason, and people are only willing to buy the shares at $80. So in the process, what that means for the investment bank is that they sell it at $80. Well, they've lost $20 on each share, which means they didn't value it correctly, which one means that the reputation of that investment bank to value things properly has declined. And for another, it means the investment bank has lost a shit ton of money. And that's very bad because these IPOs are usually for a lot of shares and a lot of money. So that's not a good scenario. The better scenario is that you have an IPO where the investment bank buys the shares at $100 per share, and then immediately the interest and the demand for that share goes up and up and up. And so the investment bank is able to sell those shares to the public at $150 a share. So they're making $50 per share. That's great for them. What that also means is that, this part in terms of the investment bank selling to the public, none of this money will go to the now public company. This is where the money goes to the now public company. Because it's whatever price the investment bank agreed to buy it at is the amount of money that goes into that public company's pocket. In the example of Big Hit going public, I believe there were 3 investment banks that when an investment bank works to do all this, it's called underwriting, because essentially they're saying, we underwrite this share price, we've valued the company into all of its little bits and pieces, which is based on how much money we think this part of the business will make in the future, blah, blah, blah. It's very mathematical and whatever estimation they use, they figure out, they're okay, we value this company at this amount. We think this is a fair value for how much this company will make and be worth. And this is divided by the number of shares you're issuing. That's going to be your share price. So they underwrite it at a certain amount. So for Big Hit, there was 3 companies. It was JP Morgan and 2 Korean banks. I'm not exactly sure because I can't read the prospectus because it was in Korean. I don't know whether those 3 investment banks split the total IPO between the 3 of them, or if it was just 3 people or 3 banks validating the IPO price, and then one of them is what Big Hit moved forward with. I'm not sure. So if anybody speaks Korean and wants to validate that for me, go ahead. If anybody wants to translate anything for me related to business financial statements for Big Hit, HYBE, whatever, please do. And I'm not just saying summarize, translate everything, because what I will glean out of it is gonna be a lot more than what you just summarize. This is the bane of my existence. Why don't they have it in English? I understand why they don't have it in English, because they are a Korean public company, but anyway. So the IPO was in October of 2020. And how much money did Big Hit make off of it? They had 7.1 million shares that they issued at a IPO share price of $115 a share. So what they made was roughly $820 million. That is a good chunk of change. Good for them. Okay, so their IPO. Right? So using our example before, I'm just trying to apply it to Big Hit to help you understand what you're looking at. You have $820 million went into Big Hit's pocket. They issued 7.1 million shares to the investment bank. Of that 7.1 million shares, I don't know exactly how this worked because the way I've drawn it on this diagram is that all of the 7.1 million shares went through the investment bank to BTS, Bank PD&M, and the public. But maybe it was like the chunk that went to BTS and Bank PD&M was separated from the amount that went to the investment bank. I don't know. Again, you know where this would be detailed? On the fucking prospectus that I can't read because I don't read Korean. Anyway. So this is where Bank PD&M bought 3 million shares to get a 43% ownership of the company. BTS got 6.7% collectively, which is like 479,000 shares. And then everything else, 3.6 million shares, or 50% of the company, went to the public. And by the public, I literally just mean everyone else. It could have been other executives from Big Hit. It could be other companies in the industry. Could be anyone. I don't know. I feel like that information would be in Korean articles because the like English articles related to all of this were also translating or were trying to glean information from Korean documents. So they were struggling as well, and that's why there isn't that much information available. By the way, this is why I wasn't making a Big Hit IPO video originally. I know I promised you guys that I would consider making an Army Finance video on the IPO, but literally there's a language barrier. There's like a wall that I can't cross because I don't speak Korean and because all the publications, all the like articles I saw about it were also literally saying like they would sound really smart as they talked about the IPO, and at the very bottom they would be like, what was provided from the blah blah blah, because it's not translated. And I'm just like, so we're just playing a game of telephone between like this article and wherever they got their information from, which might have been from another article that also got their information from like the one journalist they had that spoke Korean. So anyway, again, fan translators, if you want to, out of the goodness of your heart, help me out, please feel free to translate. I will just sing your praises. I will not let you down. Hopefully you translate something good, but yeah. Anyway, okay, back to this. All right, let's put some dollar figures on this. The amount, so when you get shares, you have to buy them. You don't get them for free, unfortunately. So Bank PD&M, for his own shares, had to pay $351 million, which means he's a very wealthy man from the get-go. But we knew this already about him. But and technically, BTS would have had to pay $55 million. By the way, I'm also talking in dollars because that's my currency. I live in the US, and this just helps me understand what I'm looking at, because unfortunately when I see numbers in Korean won, I have no idea what I'm looking at. Anyway, what was I saying? The $55 million, they would have had to pay that, but luckily for them, Bank PD&M gifted it to them, which means that he paid it on their behalf. So Bank PD&M paid $406 million during the IPO. Do you have $406 million lying around? I don't. But yeah, so that is how what I understand is what he did based on the limited information I have. So good for him. And I really applaud him paying $55 million worth of shares for BTS. That is a great man. All right. Anyway, moving on. So what does owning a share of Big Hit stock actually mean? So there are basically three things that you benefit from, the three benefits you get from owning a share. One, the biggest one, is investment gain. So if you're just a random person in the public, you, me, because in my example, I guess we've been kicked out of management of the company because we can't buy it. Big Hit shares can be bought and sold on one of the Korean stock exchanges called HYBE, which I can go into this another time, but basically there's different there's at least two, but I think there's three Korean stock markets. And if you guys watched my Army Finance 101 video, and how I discussed that, like, in America, we have 2 or 3 stock markets as well. And the two main ones, like, there's one that is for, like, slow, more stable stock, like companies, like utility companies, or like massive food giants, like where McDonald's would be, or gas companies or oil companies. Like there's like that slow market, and and then there's, I forget what it's called, which is bad because I made the video, whatever. And then there's the other market, which is for more like IT and Silicon Valley stuff. Like that's where like Uber is and Microsoft, and like things that stocks that are more volatile and change based on what product that company made this year and what's going on in the world, like, you know, like stuff like that. So in Korea they have that divide as well, and usually K-pop companies go into the stock exchange for volatile stock. It's called KASDAQ. I forgot what it's called. But that's where all like the big three are, where the former big three entertainment agencies. Big Hit, on the other hand, got onto the Kospi Stock Exchange, which is the like stable stock one, which just means that they had a lot more requirements that they had to, like, basically barriers that they had to overcome, and like in order to be listed on there, and they had to prove that they were a stable company and that they could raise enough money in an IPO to be there. And it also just means that they have to be more transparent, and they have added layers of documentation that they have to maintain now, which is just annoying, I guess. But yeah, it allowed them to raise the most money possible in an IPO by being listed here. Oh, man, I've been talking for a while. I hope this is interesting. Oh, my tea got cold. Oh, well. Okay, so you can buy and sell shares of Big Hit stock on the Kospi Stock Exchange. And basically, the price of one share will fluctuate over time based on what the company does or industry or world events. So that gets into economics, into macroeconomics, which is just, it doesn't matter. Basically, just prices fluctuate based on what the world thinks is happening with Big Hit, and if they think Big Hit is making good business decisions or bad ones. So what that means for the individual shareholder is that if you bought stock and you bought it when it was $100 and you sold it, and then the value goes up to $120, and then you go, great, and you sell it, you've made $20 a share. The alternative that can happen, which would suck, is that you buy it, and then for some reason the value goes down, the price goes down to like $60, in which case you basically have two options. Either you're going to hold on to it and hope the price is going to go back up, or if you need cash right this instant and you just can't hold on to it anymore, you can sell it. Could you guys hear my cat in the background? Sorry. I think he's hungry. Or you can sell it, but in the process, you would basically be losing $40 a share. So yeah. Dividend income. Some stocks pay dividends. A dividend, how do I explain it to the layperson? It's just basically, if you are Big Hit and you make a shit ton of money this year, your like bottom line, your profit after all of your expenses is just like $100 million. That's that's the amount of, that's your bottom line, and you're like, this is great. You can have a dividend policy where you say, we're going to pay or 50 cents for each share that is out in the market. So everybody who owns a share of at least one share of Big Hit stock will get 50 cents. If they own 2 shares, they're now getting $1. If they own 3 shares, they're getting $1.50, etc., etc. Not all stock have dividends, and not like a company is not required to pay you dividends every year. It depends on their dividend policy, which is determined by the board of directors, and I will get into that later, what a board of directors is. But essentially, I don't know if Big Hit stock pays dividends because that would have been written in the prospectus, which is in Korean. So yeah, moving on. And then the other benefit you get out of owning a Big Hit share is that you have ownership. So everyone who owns a share is a shareholder, and shareholders vote on board members and certain business decisions, and they also receive annual reports, like you're required to, because the public company has to be transparent with everybody who is an owner in it. And yeah, and your ownership percentage of the company is proportional to how many shares you own out of the total number of shares issued. So yeah, so that's what this means. So that's what this means for the general public. What does this mean for BTS, right? Because they own shares too. So for them, it's a little bit more interesting. They have the same 3 benefits where they have investment gains, or they would potentially have dividend income, and they have a percentage ownership of the company. But for them, it's very interesting because since they were gifted their original shares, they didn't pay for them. So if they ever sold them for any value, they would make money immediately off of it. And it's up to them if they ever decide to sell. Like, I don't know what would make them sell or like what their thought process about this is, but like it only has cash value when you sell it. Yeah, so basically at the time of the IPO, they had 479,000 shares combined. So per person, that's like 68,000 shares. And if the IPO price was $115, then each person basically had shares worth $7.9 million, which is amazing. And it was gifted to them. And so if they sold, so I'm recording this on the 4th. So I looked up the value. Right now, the value is $215 a share. If they sold it today, at that $215 price point, they would make combined $103 million, or per person, that would be $15 million. So they would instantly be millionaires by that alone, excluding the fact that I think they're millionaires already based on how much money they've made through their employment contracts by being amazing artists. But yeah, and then ownership-wise, at the time of IPO, they had a 6.7% ownership stake in Big Hit Entertainment. All right, so Bang PD Nim. Bang PD Nim, at the time of IPO, had 3 million shares, and he got them at $115 a pop. So he paid $351 million for his share alone. Assuming he never bought more shares and never sold his shares, same with BTS, if he sold all of them today at the price point of $215 a share, he would make $645 million. So if you subtract that from the amount he paid to get those shares originally, he would earn $294 million. Wow. Good for you, Bang PDNM. Yeah. Anyway, I actually know that he got more shares. So like this is just like a hypothetical example. But yeah, and then at the time of the IPO, he had a 43% ownership of Big Hit Entertainment. So he was the majority stakeholder, and no one person had more shares than him. All right, so summary. Here's everything we talked about. How all those shares were divided up between Bang PDNM, BTS, and everyone else, the public, and how much money was made off of everyone, and how in total from the IPO, Big Hit received $820 million, right? So hopefully now going through this, it doesn't seem as complicated, doesn't seem as scary. I really dislike how some of these articles try to sound smart and they overcomplicate this by so much. It's at the heart of it, an IPO is not that complicated. The individual bits of how things are valued and how prices fluctuate and who has what ownership is complicated, but the general idea of here's shares, give me money, you now own part of my business is pretty straightforward. Okay, so who owns Big Hit? Again, this is another way of summarizing what we just talked about and also adding in a board of directors. Essentially, you have Big Hit Entertainment. This is still 2019. Big Hit Entertainment is run by the C-suite level executives, the CEO, CFO, COO, I don't know, ABC, whatever. And they answer to the board of directors, or the BOD. That's like the usual way the acronym you use for it. And I'm going to keep using that throughout this. So just remember, BOD is board of directors. So, the board of directors are essentially people who are knowledgeable about that business, knowledgeable about that field, that company, whatever, and they have to be elected to their positions by the shareholders. So if you have a share in Big Hit, you have at least like that percentage of a vote. You get one vote. I don't really know exactly how much your vote would be. That would be literally written into the bylaws and like how that would work. And it is in Korean, so I can't tell you the details about that. But anyway, and then the board of directors have one person who's the chairman. And the chairman, I will go into detail later about like what the chairman is and like their responsibilities and all of that. But basically all you need to know is that Bang PDNM is the chairman of the board of directors of Big Hit. He is the big kahuna. He is the guy in charge. That makes me happy. Okay. All right. So what are we spending our $820 million on? We are going to, we meaning Big Hit, we are going to invest more money in Weverse and Weverse Shop. We are going to go find and get more artists on Weverse. We are going to make and post more paid content on Weverse so that fans want to go on there more. We will expand our merch options at the Weverse Shop. And we will make and sell more media content through the Weverse Shop. Hey, remember that partnership that we started with Keysway? Let's work more with them on VR and streaming technology. Let's host more virtual concerts. And then let's have a bunch of other projects. That $820 million is going a long way towards expanding our business, and we're going to use every dollar. And I'm literally about to show you how nuts this is. All right. So we've made it to the present. Well, kind of, yeah. So it's January of this year, January of 2021. First thing that was announced is that Big Hit signed a agreement with YG Entertainment. So I guess I need to backtrack a little bit. So we all know that over this past year during the pandemic, no concerts could be held. And concerts were pretty much the fastest way that artists were making money for themselves and their company. Like outside of BTS, no one else was selling albums at the no one else is selling albums at the rate that BTS sells them at. Like, it's just absurd. And I'm talking specifically about the K-pop industry, like K-pop artists. Nobody was making as much money as BTS was off their albums. So for everyone else, the main way that they could make a huge sum of money in one go was by having a concert, which makes sense, right? Like, obviously there are a bunch of expenses associated with hosting a concert and having like all of the stage design and production and all of that stuff. But relative to how much money you make, if you have an arena and like 20,000 people come, or if you have, well, okay, fine, most K-pop artists are just having arenas. But if you have a stadium like BTS where you have like 60, 70, 80,000 people come, and each ticket is between 50 to like 250 or 350, right? Like, that's a lot of money that you make immediately. So because of the pandemic and how all of that got rid of all of that, literally every company started investing in virtual stuff, in streaming platforms, in virtual concerts, in merch. And one of the things that YG did is they have this like platform called YG Plus. Their strengths are music distribution and merchandising, which, as you guys know, Big Hit sold us a lot of stuff through Weaver's shop over this last year. The amount of merch that I've bought, I'm not going to tell you how much merch I bought, but like everything, you guys know what I'm talking about. And their pain points, as we've seen, is having enough merch, having good quality merch, right? Because weren't there like stories of poor quality stuff and things needing to be returned and melting batteries or something like that? I don't remember. So there was that. So they had like poor quality control in certain aspects. And they just had the logistics of shipping to like America was painful as fuck. So they need help in that department. And it is also in their interest to get even more artists on Weverse. So this arrangement that they put together with YG is for them. They bought $63 million worth of shares in YG Plus, which gave them like 17.9, 18% ownership of that subsidiary. And in exchange, they also had an agreement where YG artists will now be on Weverse and Weverse shop. And so that means that YG is now less inclined to create their own version of Weverse and have their own streaming platform, because they have this agreement to use Weverse. And because of that, it's in their best interest to help sustain Weverse and to put better content on that and to draw more fans to that platform. So it's helpful for Big Hit to join with them, and it's helpful for YG for obvious reasons. Both sides benefit from this, because hopefully also by getting the expertise of YG Plus and all their resources and networks for distributing music and merchandising, hopefully that will help Weverse be better. So yeah, so that's that one. Moving on. This one was fun. So basically, Naver, which is the media, everyone knows who Naver is. It's basically the competitor to Google. It's a media giant, IT giant. I don't even know what you call it. But anyway, so they own VLive. And for however long it's been, VLive has been where BTS was releasing most of their content, where they were doing all their random like VLive streams on there. They were releasing BTS Run. They streamed virtual concerts through it, like when they were at Wembley, and when they were in Saudi Arabia, and when they did their Seoul final concert. I think they also used VLive when they did the Musters Festa in the past. So yeah, so Weverse was just like basically dominated a bit by BTS, or another way of putting it is BTS was propping up that platform. So in a nutshell, over the last year, BTS have basically left that platform, and they've started sharing their content on Weverse instead of just exclusively on VLive like before. So because of that, most armies will just buy all that stuff through Weverse instead because we're loyal. So VLive has not been making much money at all. And so in order for VLive to basically continue and not to just wink out of existence, Naver decided to partner with Big Hit and work together going forward. So they embarked on a joint venture, which is what you see here. Naver bought a 49% stake in Benix, which is now being renamed to Wever's company, and they paid $319 million. Whew. So they are now the second largest shareholder of Benix after Big Hit, which makes sense, right? Because a joint venture, so you're pretty much only going to have two people involved. Well, you can have more people in a joint venture, but in this case, it's like them two. At the same time, Wever's company, they bought VLive for $180 million, and they're not going to be in charge of that platform going forward. And like right now, the platforms continue to operate separately, but there's potential for the two to merge in the future. Oh, and by the way, in order for both Big Hit and Naver to have all the funds to do this, there was like something that was a bit more complicated. There were more shares of Benix issued by Big Hit, and then they were bought back, and it's complicated, and it doesn't really matter much for this explanation, so we'll leave it here. But just know that like more shares were issued. Whatever, it doesn't matter. All right, by the way, I'm going to rewind really quick, and I'm going to tell you that fun fact. So hold on. This thing happened in January, right? So rewinding back to August of last year, VLive paid $85 million to SM Entertainment in an agreement where SM artists would become more active on that platform, on VLive, and they would create a global fan club service on there. So all of this was in hopes of generating more interest in VLive and in the end more revenue for them because they were reportedly struggling. And also I'm going to back up even further to April to talk about how JYP, SM, and Naver established a joint concert company like right in the middle of the pandemic called Beyond Live. I don't think this was related to the pandemic because you can't react to the pandemic that quickly. I would venture to guess that after BTS, they saw that BTS was having success live streaming their performances, like their concerts in Wembley and Saudi Arabia and Seoul. They wanted to get in on that because they saw that there was demand from global fans wanting to attend a concert, which makes sense, right? So that's what they had been working on. So this Beyond Live corporation specializes in online concerts and utilizes Naver's technology. So it's basically like, it's just taking what the partnership that VLive and Big Hit had for those three concerts and making it more of an official thing between JYP, SM, and VLive or Naver. But yeah, so they wanted to formalize that, and I guess it's just funny because at this like same point in time, I think in May, I saw reports that like, oh, Big Hit and Kisway are talking and gonna have an agreement, blah blah blah. So Big Hit was aware that this was happening, and they were like, fine, we don't want to play with you. We're moving on to better technology and better things, and they just moved on to Kisway and started their own stuff. But yeah, anyway. Going back, so here's all this backstory for VLive. So VLive has all these ongoing agreements, right? Going back to January, it is now Wever's company now owns VLive, and VLive has stake in Beyond Live Corporation with JYP and SM, and also has an agreement with SM for SM to be doing their fanship global fan club service thing on there. So basically, it's just funny to me that, like, what I think Big Hit realized quickly is that if they were going to keep expanding in and keep growing, it was a much better move for them to work with the other former big three entertainment agencies in Korea than to just be flat out rivals and avoid them and try to undercut them and compete with them everywhere. I think I don't know what their strategy was, but what I want to say is that it was probably partially like a nationalist, like a sense of like, hey, like, we're all from this small country called South Korea. We should help each other out and grow together so that we can make a name for ourselves, as a country, not just as like this one successful company that beat down all the other K-pop companies to win. Because that's just not right? That doesn't look good. That doesn't feel good to be part of that. And then the other thing is I think that Big Hit realized that the more you compete with people, the more obnoxious it is because you're constantly trying to outdo one another. And when you have a global music industry, especially in the West, that still has a lot of animosity and hostility to you being there, it's better not to fight at home as well. It's better to just be more on the same page. So that's why I think all of this has started happening. Anyway, all right. Speaking of which, February rolls around. All right. So that joint venture that Big Hit started with Keesway, it's got a very ugly name. It's called KBYK Live. I don't know what it stands for. I don't know if I want to. Oh, no, actually, I do know. It stands for Keesway Big Hit Youth Knowledge Live. I don't know. I'm making it up. So that was the name of their venture. And they started this platform called Venue Live. Venue Live. It's supposed to be a play on... Sorry, I keep hitting the stupid pop filter. It's supposed to be a play on the words venue and new because it's supposed to be like a virtual venue. It was actually started in September of last year. And I don't know if you know this, guys, but we've been using this platform whenever we've had our virtual concerts. We just didn't know. Yeah. Because it's very interesting. Like the software and all this stuff, that's what we've been using. We've just, it was never marketed to us that way. Or if it was, maybe I just ignored it. I don't know. But anyway, so since then, I guess Universal Music Group and YG realized that this was a great platform to use. And I've already mentioned that YG doesn't have its own streaming platform, so it's getting in on the action everywhere else. And I'm sure YG noticed that, hey, you have these other two, the other two agencies already in on their own platform. So YG's like, fuck, I've been left behind. Everyone's got their own streaming platform except me. So that's why it was, and they're like, fine, you know what? We'll work with Big Hit. We'll get ahead this way. And they joined in on this Venue Live thing, which is going to be this huge platform, which you actually can use right now. It has a website. If you guys Google Venue Live, it's real. It's live. I didn't know this. Apparently this is supposedly from some of the articles I read where Big Hit has had some of their press briefings or some of their news releases. I'm not exactly sure, or even if that's like accessible to the public. But when I clicked through the website, I saw that it was like, hey, we hosted the New Year's show, and I was like, oh, okay, I didn't know. I watched it, but I didn't even know. And there's stuff on there from HYBE and 17. So it's ongoing. Anyway, So basically there's 2 new partners now involved in that, which means more money has come into the venture, because whenever you become a partner of something, you have to pay in. You have to provide money if you want to say you have ownership of something. So now, yeah, they're working on something, improving it. I don't know, but that's what was announced in February. And then the other thing that was announced is that Big Hit and Geffen Records, which is one of the labels under Universal Music Group, like there's a ton, there's like a million groups under Universal Music Group. It's the biggest music company in the world, I think. Anyway, one of them, which is like a really long-standing label that's been around for like 40 years, called Geffen Records, they partnered with Big Hit to have a joint venture where they're going to debut a global boy group out of the US. So basically they're trying to bring the kind of like the K-pop model of finding talent and training them to the US. I don't really know much about that. I do know, I read something that said that like in 2022, they were going to have auditions for it. So it's a very slow burn thing. Or who knows, maybe it's going by fast. I don't really know what they're doing. But so that's one partnership. And then another agreement they made between Big Hit and Universal is that more Universal artists would be joining Weavers. And like we've seen some of that already, but even more would be coming, which again is good for Weavers, because if you have your competing labels, companies, whatever, joining your platform, it incentivizes those other companies to help your platform, your Weavers company platform, become even more successful, because it's in their best interest as well, right? Or else they've made a bad business decision and it's not going to end up, they're going to lose money if it all, ends up failing. And it also means that they're not hopefully going to make their own competing platform because they're on yours, and it would cost a shit ton of money for them to do that. But yeah, so it's good news. Don't really know how I feel about the global boy group, but I will keep an open mind. All right. Next. Oh my God. Big Hit has been so busy this year, and it's only been like 3 months. So, they announced that they were buying a $3.6 million share in this Korean-based voice AI technology company called Supertone. I don't know if you guys seen the articles about it. It's basically a company that can recreate someone's voice using AI and can make that person say anything, which there are moral implications and questions that calls into. Like, you have to tread carefully because you don't want to make people say things against their will, right? And I think I read an article about Supertone that was saying that they became popular because they recreated some Korean artist who passed away a while ago and brought his voice back and did it so well or something. But I think it's like singing. That's even creepier. How do you make an AI sing? I don't know. Doesn't matter. So like that is the ethical implication of like, you need to tread carefully when you have a software that can make basically anyone say anything. But the way this was marketed is that it's actually supposed to be helpful. There was like one recent interview that the COO of Supertone gave, where he was giving an example of how their software could be used. And he was saying, the example he gave was for BTS. He said, hey, this would be especially helpful to BTS considering how busy they are. And they might not have the time to be able to make games or audiobooks or dub an animation. And this would allow them to do it without necessarily having to record in person and go somewhere. Like they could, just like let this software do it. And then, because, there's like a lot of planning that goes into figuring all that out. And like maybe you're like, hey, can I borrow BTS to record like this one part of my game? And then I'll need them again in 2 weeks. And then I'll need them again a week later. And like BTS will be like, I don't have that free time. I'm busy doing other stuff. And so in that case, you have this AI program where you can take a week and be like, okay, I need the AI program to say boom, boom, boom. Come back a week later, say, okay, now I need it to say boom, 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 blah, blah, blah. That's the intent behind this, theoretically. I don't really know much more beyond that. Maybe there's more articles on this in Korean. Like, I understand the intent. This is supposed to be helpful. I just think this kind of stuff is a little bit creepy. Just me. So, okay. So the thing is, I talk about all of these projects, about like, and all these ideas and all these business ventures as if it's like, oh, it's so easy. It's so obvious to do. Like, boom, boom. Like, let's just do it. But all of these things cost so much money. They take so much time planning. So many people have to be involved. So many people have to be on the same page and clear about what the idea is in terms of what you're doing. So the question then becomes, how did Big Hit come up with all of these project ideas and business ventures? And the answer to that, which I swear I could I wanted to actually make an entire video on it, is that the answer is this through their vision. Their vision has guided everything they've done, and it's just incredible to see how accurate and how realistic they were in their initial thoughts. Because basically, their guiding mission, their mission statement, was that they are music and artist for healing. And their priorities from the beginning have been to reduce the pressure and burden on BTS while prioritizing the fan experience and the fan-artist relationship. And their goal, which they've talked about in their press briefing, is that they want to create a paradigm shift in how things are done in the music industry. I think you and I and everyone can agree that like the music industry isn't perfect. There's a lot of things that are not done correctly, where the priority is making money and not actually connecting people or making people happy with music, where there's a lot of like fake behavior, where there's abusive behavior, where there's corruption, where people play the game because the priority is always like, well, we need to grow, we need to make more money. And I'm talking about like all over the world, in the West, in the East, in Asia, everywhere. So from the beginning, the fact that Big Hit and Bang PD Nim were like, no, this needs to change. We need to be the change we want to see in the world, is incredible. And I'm also thinking of Bang PD Nim's speech that he gave at like a commencement speech, like a graduation ceremony for some Korean university, where he talked about like his motivation in his life and how he's got to where he is. And a lot of it was rage at the injustices and unfairness and like things that weren't done right in the music industry and how badly he wanted to change it. I don't know. I just find that inspirational. So yeah. Let me know if you would ever want me to do another, like a video on this, because there's just so much I could explain about how I think what I see of their vision, how that translates into the business decisions they make, and how I always think that the priority is the fan experience and how our lives will be better by what they're doing. And I just think it's really cool. Anyway. So we made all these moves, right? We have so many artists on Weverse, on Weverse Shop. We have Weverse Company that now also owns VLive, and VLive has all these other arrangements with the other K-pop companies. You have Venue Live, which is all the agreements between all of these labels. There's just so much going on, right? It's really complicated. It's very messy. We need to reorganize. This is how HYBE was born. And when you think of it this way, it makes a little more sense why it exists, right? When they dropped it out of the blue, it was kind of like they pulled away our security blanket in the sense of like, big hit, that's our security blanket. They're like, no, you don't need that. You need order. And I say this because essentially they were trying to reorganize the company because they want to keep growing. They want to keep expanding and connecting with other parts of the music industry around the world, and they couldn't do it when it was this hot mess. It's too messy. It's too complicated from a finance perspective, from an accounting perspective, from a business perspective when you're trying to form new arrangements with other companies and they're like, where would I fit into all of this? This is easier. Let me repeat what they explained to us in the brand video, and maybe it'll make more sense. Okay, so HYBE is divided into basically two segments. You have HYBE HQ and HYBE America. We'll put HYBE America to the side for now. We'll come back to that. HYBE HQ is comprised of like 3 organizations that just work in tandem. You have HYBE Labels, HYBE Solutions, and HYBE Platforms. HYBE Labels is obviously all of the music labels that roll up or did roll up under Big Hit, now roll up under HYBE. HYBE Solutions is all of the experts who specialize in all the different aspects of the business. So let's see, HYBE 360 used to be Big Hit 360, so that's concerts and fan meetings. HYBE IP is all of the merch, Tiny Tans, In the Soup. I don't know anything for any other artists, but yeah, like all that stuff goes there. HYBE Edu, I think that's where Learn Korean with BTS is coming from. But yeah, Superb is the mobile games, so that's what spearheads all the games that they come out with. And then you have HYBE Solutions Japan and HYBE T&D Japan, which is like training and development. Basically, they just have a whole separate arm for Japan. And on the label side too, I noticed that. I was thinking it's maybe because the way they want to train artists and market them in Japan is different from the rest of the world. And I mean, this kind of also makes sense in that for America, they've started that joint venture with Geffen Records to create a boy group because they're trying to cater their model of finding talent and developing it to the country that they're trying to make music in. So, yeah, I guess that's where that comes from. And then HYBE Platforms, right now they just said it's Weverse. And so here's Weverse company, which now owns VLive. And then on the side, all of their joint ventures. Honestly, some of their joint ventures in my mind should go under HYBE Platforms, but from like an accounting standpoint, I guess they just kind of treat them separately as like, here's what we do, and then on the side we have all these joint ventures. We'll come back to this map. Let me just keep going. All right, so basically, Bora was nice enough to translate parts of the HYBE corporate risk report that was issued on the HYBE website because, hey, they're a public company. Every time they have a huge business transaction, they need to disclose it. It's, required. So they issued this new report. So I translated some of the pages and tried to make them a bit clearer. I'm hoping I did this right. If anyone speaks Korean, Bora, if you're watching, let me know if I did this wrong. Because I don't speak Korean and I'm doing my best. But yeah, okay. So basically, on this page, and I have a diagram which shows the ownership percentages on this thing that we just saw. So we'll come back to it. But essentially they were saying, yeah, we own everything here. Superb is a joint venture, so we only own 51% of it. Weverse, between us and Naver, we own 71% of it. Naver owns the rest. And then all this other stuff like Big Hit Japan, 100%. Big Hit America, 100%. They have something on here called Big Hit Universal. I don't know what this is. They own 100% of it. This is the first time I saw it, so I don't know what this is. If anybody can read this and explain this to me, I would love to know what the hell this is. So, okay. And then moving on, this is talking about their labels. So B-Lift is a joint venture with the acronym I can't remember. So they own 48% of it. Superb, again, is on here, 51%. Here's the other three music labels. They own like 80%, 67%. So it's not 100%, but like they own the majority stake. YG Plus, they only have an 18% stake in. We just saw that. Supertone, 18% stake. Naver Z, 5%. I don't know what this is. This is something else that's new. So if anybody can translate any of this or like look up more stuff for me, I'd love to know. And then here's their Venue Live thing with Keysway and all the other partners. They own a 59% stake in it, which means they have the majority, which makes sense. If I was Big Hit and I knew how much demand there is for BTS concerts in any format, I too would maintain control of a venture that would allow fans of BTS to see it. So yeah, smart move. Okay, so here's that thing again, that graphic that I made, but now with all the percentage ownerships. So this is HYBE owns the majority of everything. They pretty much are in control of all of this. And then here's their joint ventures. Their joint ventures, 18% of this, 59% of the Venue Live thing, 18% of Supertone, and 5% of Naver Z, whatever that is. Yeah, this is what this looks like. But who owns HYBE? So HYBE, similar to Big Hit, also has a board of directors, which are elected by shareholders. And I know things have changed over time. Transactions have happened. More shares have been issued and all of that. But at this point in time, I don't know what they are. Mostly, again, because I can't speak Korean or read Korean or any of that. So it's like I know that in like March or whatever, Bang PD had 34.7% of the shares. I don't know if he had 3 million. I think he had way more at this point. I think it's like 12 million shares actually. I have no idea if this is the interesting thing. I have no idea if BTS have ever bought more shares in HYBE. They obviously could have. They could have bought a ton more because they are wealthy. But I do not know if they have. I do not know if they've sold any of it. I don't know. And then I don't know what anyone else has done this just as other people. But yeah, so it's still roughly the same structure as before at this point in time after the restructuring with Chairman Bang PD in charge of the board of directors. All right, let's move on and finally get to the main thing that instigated this whole video. In April, which we are still in, HYBE America created in subsidiary called Big Hit Odyssey Merger, which is a great name, by the way. It could have been a very boring name, but no, they made it very, very exciting. And they bought Ithaca Holdings for apparently like $1 billion. So now they own 100% of it. And Ithaca Holdings, in case you don't know, is it's a music label agency company. I don't know what the term for that is, but under which were it was basically divided into two parts. You had the Scooter Brown projects and Big Machine Label Group. And apparently there's controversy with Big Machine Label Group because that's where Taylor Swift released her like first 5 albums under, and they owned the recording rights to it and they wouldn't give them to her, so she had to re-record the albums. Like, you know, all those articles about Taylor Swift not being able, like her initial music being held hostage or whatever. That's supposedly the group that's related to that controversy. And then the Scooter Brown projects are just like his artists, like they include his artists, which are Justin Bieber, Ariana Grande, Demi Lovato, big artists, and then a bunch of other ones. But that's what this organization is. Quick point before I move on. Why does HYBE America exist? Well, it's probably because they wanted to be able to cleanly apply American regulations for business arrangements, like company acquisitions, mergers, joint ventures, IPOs, whatever. And instead of having one big company called HYBE that operates in both Korea and America and Japan, I guess, and has to be compliant with Korean and Japanese and American laws, HYBE America allows them just having to worry about HYBE America being compliant with American regulations. It's easier, it's less of a headache, makes sense. All right, so they created this Big Hit Odyssey Merger LLC. They created a subsidiary in like end of March, and they moved money around and so that Big Hit America could buy Ithaca. I wonder how long this has been in process, because do you have $1 billion lying around? No, neither do I. Neither do most companies. Like, anyway, I'll keep going. So I'll explain in a minute where they got the $1 billion from, but essentially, so they bought, Big Hit Odyssey Merger bought Ithaca Holdings. They merged. So they became one. And then, Big Hit Odyssey Merger was dissolved. It like no longer exists. So now Ithaca is the only thing left, and it now rolls up directly into HYBE America. Yeah, that is basically what happened. And now the more exciting part, I guess, is where did HYBE find $1 billion? This is where I'm going to say that I need more information. Bora, if you would like to translate more of the disclosure report or any part that explains that in further detail, I would really appreciate it. Because yeah, I need more information. Because essentially the way I understand it, they issued 2.2 million additional shares at $175 a share. So that translates to like $390 million, right? And they also, from what I understood of the translation I read from Bora, is that they partially paid the previous owners of Ithaca Holdings in HYBE stock, because HYBE stock has value. So it's like, I could have given you $10 or $100. I could have given you $215, or I could have given you one share of Big Hit stock. And if I'm Big Hit, I don't have $215, hypothetically, but I have shares. I can make more shares all the time. So it's a little bit easier for me to just issue more shares and be like, here you go. So that is what I think they did. I don't have 100% clear picture of where they found the $1 billion, because $390 million is not $1 billion. I don't know, whatever. I need more help with this. But anyway, somehow they got that money. All right, so here's the thing that Bora translated that I was trying to understand, is that prior to this whole acquisition, Bang PD&M owned 34.7% of HYBE. And then when you issue more shares, your personal ownership percentage is going to go down, because if I was 4 shares, or if I was 35 shares, oh, that's a bad example. If I was 10 shares out of a 100 share issued company, I have a 10% stake. If the company now issues another 100 shares, now they have 200 shares on the market, well, I'm 10 shares out of 200. 5%? Did I just do mental math? Yeah, 5%. Anyway, yeah, I'm a CPA. Anyway, yeah, so your personal ownership percentage goes down unless you go out and buy additional stock. That is what Bang PD Nim did. They issued more stock. They issued $2.2 million to 2.2 million shares, additional shares. And he started off with 12.4 million shares. He had a 34.7% ownership. Total shares issued were 30 at that point in time between all of the acquisitions and ventures and everything they did. I'm sure it was paid. All of those things were partially paid with shares. That's typically one of the benefits of becoming a public company, is like you can just issue more shares. The downside is that it decreases the value of your share. And it also means that if you, like Bang PD Nim, want to maintain your ownership percentage, you have to buy back shares yourself. So you personally have to spend more money. So in Bang PD Nim's case, they started off with 35.6 million shares. They issued 2.2 million more. So now there's almost 38 million out on the market. And he bought an additional 506 to go from 2.4 plus 506 equals 12.9 million shares, to basically have his percentage dip a tiny bit, but roughly stay the same. So he's still the person with the majority stakehold in the company. But yeah, sucks for him. According to Bora's translation, it cost him like $88 million. So it seems like this transaction, like Bang PD Nim paid more than the actual company. I don't know. I need to see the whole report, and then I'd be able to say that for certain. But yeah, so that's what that looks like. So basically at this point in time, after the acquisition of Ithaca, by the way, a billion-dollar acquisition where basically HYBE swallowed a huge American entity. What do you call Ithaca Holdings? It's a holdings company, but it's like a holdings company for like labels and record companies. And it had these huge artists in it. And HYBE just swallowed it. Like, I think you've made it big at this point, HYBE. But yeah, okay. So at this point in time, you have Bang PD Nim, who now has his 12.8 million shares, 34%. What BTS has, I don't know anymore. What ownership percentage they have, I don't know anymore, unless somebody can find that information and tell me. I can't recalculate all of this. And then everyone else, basically, assuming they've never changed their share amount, the rest of the world would have 24.5 million shares. But I don't know this part. But anyway, okay, so this is roughly what I can tell of how this transaction worked. So Ithaca rolls up into HYBE. America rolls up into HYBE. And HYBE is owned by all of these people. And HYBE is run by the C-suite executives and the board of directors. And one of the things that happened is that I mentioned that as part of the acquisition, the current owners or the previous owners now of Ithaca Holdings had to be bought out. And so they were bought out by being given stock in HYBE. So what the amount of shares they got was, it's like listed here. So Scooter has 462. Scott Borchetta, who's the CEO of Big Machine, what did I call him? Big Machine Label Group. That's the CEO of that. He has 167K shares, and then Justin Bieber, Ariana Grande, Demi Lovato have 54K shares or 0.1% ownership, and then everyone else, blah, blah, blah. We don't care about them. Based on the amount of shares they have out of the total amount issued, here's the amount ownership they have in the company, which means Bang PD Nim is still in charge. This is our big man of the house. All right, so I mentioned before, we're finally getting to some questions now. I mentioned before that a public company is run by the C-suite level executive, CEO, CFO, COO, whatever. And then above them is the board of directors. And the board of directors, who the hell are they? Essentially, they are an elected group of people who represent shareholders in a public company. And they include both internal and external members. So essentially, it's like you can have any number of board members. Most companies have like 30 to 40 board members, simply because like the more people you have to argue with and determine business strategy for your company, the more obnoxious it is to get any kind of consensus or to have like people on the same page. And then I don't really know what the requirements are for like who needs to be on the board of directors, and like all of that is determined in the bylaws. So typically though, a board of directors is comprised of both internal and external members, or they're called directors or whatever. An inside director is somebody who basically knows the company, knows the industry, is an insider, right? And typically, like, they're not compensated because they're a C-level executive, either of the company in question or another company. And then you have outside directors who are like more distanced. They're not involved in the day-to-day inner workings of a company, and they usually get reimbursed, and they like receive pay for attending board of director meetings, and they give objective, independent views of the company and the business strategy. So they give you like just the outside perspective, and they're like to make sure you're not, I don't know, I guess going crazy. And the details of like what kind of experience the people on the board of directors should be, how much of each, how long they can be on that board, all that stuff. All of that has to be written out in bylaws. And those bylaws, I would imagine, are in Korean for HYBE. So if anybody ever wants to translate those or find them, you have at least one audience of me. Okay, so what does a board of directors do? They establish policy and provide oversight for the company. So they basically provide business strategy. They don't do like the day-to-day stuff of like, but it's more like the C-level executives answer to them. So they make sure that the CEO has to outline, like, here's what I want to do with the company, here's how I want to grow it, here's how I'm going to make money, here's what I'm expecting to make off of this business venture, off of that artist, here's how I want to grow this, blah, blah, blah. And the board of directors either agree or disagree, like, because they're supposed to be knowledgeable individuals in that industry and are supposed to be able to provide like good guidance. And they're also like providing it on behalf of the shareholders, because if you're a shareholder and you own a share of the company, you own stock, your goal is to make money. Your goal is to have your share rise in value. So if you want your share to rise in value, then the company has to be doing well and has to be expanding and making more money, so that I guess the world sees that company better and collectively makes the market price go up. So the board of directors is trying to grow the company in the best way possible on your behalf as the shareholder. Yeah. And then the other things they do is like they hire and fire the senior executives of the company, the CEO, the CFO. So if the CFO does a bad job, they can fire him. They're the ones who determine dividend policy and if dividends are paid or not. They're the ones who determine if additional shares will be issued, and they are the ones who determine how much those executives are paid, the like C-suite level. But yeah, that's what they do. Who is on a board of directors? Again, like I mentioned before, it's determined by the organization's bylaws. And it'll determine things like the number of board members, how they're elected, how often the board meets, what each person's duties are, all that stuff. Like that's in the bylaws. And what is a board of directors chairman? This is basically the person. He's elected by the board of directors, and he presides over and sets the agenda for the board meetings and usually has a lot of sway on how the board votes. And the thing is if you own the majority stake in your company, right, you vote. Like, the board of directors represent a portion of people, and usually it's like, so like in our case, if Bing PD Nim owns, I already forgot, what is this percentage ownership? 34%. What is 100 minus 34? So you have 66% ownership left. Let's pretend BTS doesn't exist in this example. And then you have maybe 6 board members. So you take the 66% left, let's say you divide it by the 6 board members. Each of those board members has 11% voting power. But then you have Bing PD Nim. He, as one person, has, I already forgot, what is his ownership percentage? He as one person has 34% ownership. So he can, like, he has so much sway over any vote. He's the one who's basically holding all the cards. He, as the chairman, has sway over how the board votes. The board votes on the things highlighted in the box, which is what we just went over. They vote on business strategy. They vote on senior executives, if dividends will be paid, if additional shares will be paid, if how much the company executive should be paid. So Bang PD Nim is in charge of everything, more or less. I mean, within reason, right? If he was like, I want our company to destroy everything and sell every single asset we have right now, like, the rest of the board members would all just collectively band together and be like, no, you're crazy. That's going to destroy this company. So, like, he can't do things that are, like, vastly unreasonable and would damage the company. But it's his vision that is essentially leading the rest of the board. And granted, like, this does change depending on interpersonal dynamics, which I don't know about. I don't know these people, sadly. I want to know these people. But yeah, that's essentially how that works. All right, so why did HYBE acquire Ithaca Holdings? Personally, like, these are my personal thoughts on this. We know how much trouble BTS has had in terms of breaking into the West when there are so many established companies and established connections and networks between companies to promote, showcase, like, artists, and they see BTS and Big Hit as outsiders, and they don't want to let them in. They don't want them to have a piece of the pie. Why would they? It's money that those companies could have for their own artists in their mind. So the reason I think HYBE acquired Ithaca Holdings is because it gains them a Western ally, with existing connections and networks of people and relationships. Because now Ithaca Holdings rolls up into Big Hit, their entire incentive is to make Big Hit HYBE succeed. Like, there's no way for them to get around that. They want HYBE to succeed or else they're fucked. And also, Ithaca Holdings probably has established, like, supply chain management and logistics, like, networks. So through this partnership, hopefully it'll make it easier to manufacture and sell merch in the West for HYBE. Fingers crossed. Another reason I think they did it is because they want to have Weverse. They want to have Western artists use their technology, like Weverse and Venue Live and V Live, and through this partnership, they can make them. I mean, I don't really see why Ariana Grande or Justin Bieber or Demi Lovato would be opposed to using Weverse. Like, it's not so. But yeah, but so like the idea is that they will use that now, so you have even more people who want Weverse to succeed and will help sustain it and like put more cool content on there and make you want to use that app, instead of having a competitive app that would take attention away from you and money away from you to go to your competition. I also think that this acquisition happened to further diversify the artist portfolio outside of BTS, by having these established Western stars and hopefully reduce pressure and burden off BTS in a more conclusive way. Like, because you can argue that the amount of money that someone like Ariana Grande makes is a lot more comparable to what BTS makes than TXT, than GFriend. Like, I'm not trying to throw shade. It's a fact. So like this would more likely allow basically Big Hit to wean themselves away from BTS and actually realistically decrease the burden and pressure that are on BTS to perform nonstop. And then lastly, I think this whole thing, through using Western connections, through having more Western artists on Weverse, through having their name connected to artists like Ariana Grande, Justin Bieber, whatever, it allows HYBE to become a more permanent fixture in the Western music industry. Because if artists and fans in the West are working with HYBE and using HYBE technology, then it gets normalized. It's no longer foreign. It's no longer like, oh, this weird thing that they do in South Korea. It's just something, oh, look, this is cool. Look at what this big artist is doing. Cool, let's go check it out. Yeah, those are my 2 cents. That's what I think. We have finally reached the real Q&A section of this video. I don't even know how long this is anymore. Jesus Christ. Alrighty, let's do this. So, first question, does BTS profit off of this acquisition? Yes and no. No, they don't get paid just because HYBE acquired Ithaca Holdings, sadly. They don't just get money dropped into their pocket. But yes, because as shareholders, this kind of business decision can make their share price increase. So if they, or any other shareholders, ever sell their shares, they would make a lot of money. Yes, because they benefit from the Western connections they get through Ithaca, and it helps reduce the pressure on them to carry their company. Yes, because it helps them become more of a household name in the West and be seen less as a foreigner outsider, which, yes, helps them as artists themselves trying to break into the market. Next question. Can Scooter Braun mislead people about his ownership role in the company? Sure. Anyone can misrepresent themselves to the media, especially if they're saying something spicy. But I don't think it's in his interest to do that because, one, the rest of the board, Bang PD Nim, and Army would be pissed if he did that. Two, it's a stupid, simple lie that it's really easy to disprove just by looking at the financials. And three, because when they released their statement about this, he was very complimentary about Bang PD Nim being the top dog. So I think he's already kind of revealed that he's going to be respectful. He's not going to be a fountain. And then going forward, what his role might change into, I don't know. Maybe he'll offer himself up as a resource and be put in charge of something as I know how to make artists break through in the West. Come work with me. I don't know if he'll do that or if he'll just coast and be lazy as a board member. I don't know if he wants to continue his role. I don't really know what his role was before in managing the people under Ithaca Holdings, because he was a board member for Ithaca Holdings. So you're just in charge of strategy. You're not like you're a little bit lazy. Like you just have to be in touch with like what's going on in the industry. And then like you earn money off of your stuff. Like you can obviously be more involved, but you don't have to be. So I don't really know what he was doing, and I don't really know what he wants to do in HYBE. We'll just have to see. Should armies be concerned that Scooter Brown is part of HYBE board of directors? I mean, nothing in life is ever 100% certain, but as it stands right now, he only has 1% control in the company. So his vote counts for very little, for one thing. He can provide guidance and share his knowledge and experience with the rest of the board when it comes time to like making a business decision. But if his advice is dumb or harmful, I'd like to think that the rest of the board would catch that and just not follow through. They've made smart business decisions thus far, so I think they can manage in the future too. And again, I don't know if he's still in charge of his artists that now roll up into HYBE America, because like the structure is still there. It's just like now there's someone else that he has to answer to, whereas before he didn't have to answer to anyone. So I don't know how much of a role he took in all of that. If he's still going to be involved with his artists, I hope he steers them in the right direction. Can he be in charge of other artists from the other HYBE music labels? No, not unless they let him or hire him. Like he can't just show up to them and be like, "What's up? How are you doing? I'm here to tell you what to do." He can't do that. Okay, next question. Can someone influence BTS because of the acquisition? No, not really. As employees, BTS work under Big Hit Music, which has its own leadership and operates all on its own. So though they are a subsidiary under HYBE, the entire like Big Hit Music is doing its own thing. So if somebody wanted to influence them and like derail them from what they're doing, the entire board of directors would have to agree that Big Hit Music needs to change course, including Bang PD Nim. So I don't think we have anything to worry about. As long as Bang PD Nim is in charge, he can crack the whip. He can do what he wants. So we're fine. Oh, will this acquisition help BTS get radio play? I hope so. I hope that Ithaca Holdings has better connections with radio people, but I don't know. I mean, there was always that barrier of language when it came to BTS and the fact that they weren't singing in English, and then their one English song broke through, as I predicted it would in my last Army Finance video. But yeah, I don't know. I hope so. What are the pros and cons of going public? Pros, you get access to a lot more money to do the things you want to do very quickly. Cons, you have to follow a lot more regulations as a public company. You have to issue a lot more documentation and be transparent in what you're doing. And your major shareholders and the board of directors are in charge of what you do as a business. So, pros, cons. Is HYBE cleaning up the music industry? I would like to think so. As I mentioned before, creating a paradigm shift in the industry is what Bang PD Nim and Big Hit have wanted to do from the very beginning. Their mission statement, their values, and their respect for the fan have always been something unique in the industry. Something that's, in my opinion, much more sustainable, more humane, and worthy of our support. So I really think that bit by bit, they're trying to become the global leader in not just the music industry, but the entertainment industry as a whole. And that's something I would love to go into detail into in another video. So let me know if anybody's actually interested in that. Or if I'm just going to be alone here, like singing the praises of Big Hit on my own. Okay. What changes will this acquisition bring for Western artists? Hopefully this is a cultural shift in terms of how artists see their fans, like Western artists see their fans, and how Western artists develop the fan-artist relationship. Because hopefully by being on the same platform, Western artists will be able to examine the BTS and ARMY relationship at a much closer level and learn from it. Because right now I think we're too far away from them to see anything but an overwhelming number of people and firepower. Yeah. And I imagine that the artists that were under Ithaca Holdings will now come to Weverse and Venue Live and all of that. I think Justin Bieber's already on there anyway. All right. What kind of power will HYBE have in the West after this acquisition? I think they will hopefully have a significant more power. Like I said, by leveraging the connections that Ithaca already has, and with the support of big Western artists like Justin Bieber, Ariana Grande, Demi Lovato, they'll gain even more influence. What this is called soft power. It's power given by people who respect and rely upon someone or something. So in this case, it's people who respect and rely upon HYBE. So it's the same reason why people have always called Korea's investment and growth in K-pop as soft power, meaning that the more fans and K-pop amasses around the world, the more influence Korea has through K-pop, through its artists, through that industry, which is part of how HYBE has been able to expand and swallow for $1 billion one of the big players in the Western music industry. Yeah, so soft power, it takes time, patience, and good strategy to amass. So I hope HYBE continues to get more. Why is this being called a merger and not an acquisition? Because most people don't know the difference between the two terms and don't really care. Merger seems like a cooler term. Plus, technically, Ithaca Holdings did merge with Big Hit Odyssey Merger LLC prior to being absorbed under HYBE America. And plus, just people don't know or appreciate finance terms, and they don't care. Merger sounds cool. Whatever. Why did HYBE create a phantom entity for the acquisition? Legal reasons. It's probably just easier to do it that way in terms of like the accounting for the acquisition, in terms of like minimizing legal risk and all of that. Yeah, it's probably just easier that way. Should armies be buying shares in HYBE? From what I can see, the only people who can buy shares of HYBE directly are those who have access to the Korean Stock Exchange, KOSPI. If you live outside of Korea, I don't think you can invest directly, but I think you can invest indirectly through a bunch of like different financial instruments. But it's a bit more complicated, and it's not like you invest in like a fund in which one of the things that fund invests in might be HYBE. Yeah. Also, I will point out that the stock price right now is a bit expensive, $215 a share, and you'd be buying it and hoping that the price would continue to go up and not down. And you would have to monitor it constantly and figure out for yourself if you should keep holding onto the stock or if you should sell it. Personally, I think that's way too time consuming and it gives me anxiety. But if you just wanted to buy stock and never sell it, you would, whatever amount of stock you had, you would be able to have a vote when it came time to elect board members, or not vote on a business decision, but like get your input on a business. Maybe fine. Maybe you do get to vote on business decisions. But the thing is like, unless you own a shit ton of stock, like Big PD&M with like hundreds of millions of dollars, your vote doesn't count for very much. Unless, but maybe like you and a bunch of other armies would together. I don't know. I honestly just think it's too difficult to be involved in unless you are Korean, speak Korean, can understand their Korean financial statements, and have access to the Korean stock market. Yeah. If anything goes wrong, can armies give our shares to BTS or Bang PD&M? Technically, yes. Technically, yes, you could gift them to BTS or Bang PD&M. But one, I don't think they would accept it for free, just based on the kind of people they are. Or two, I don't know if they would be in a position to have the funds to buy them from you. And you know what? I don't know. Technically, yes. I think it's possible. Technically, yes. I don't know how you get a hold of BTS to let them know you have stock and you want to give it to them, but okay. Can Jin fill his bathtub with money now? Yes, probably. But it most likely has nothing to do with their ownership shares in HYBE, since I don't think they're selling them. And it has everything to do with their employment contracts, because I bet they make bank every single day by just being successful and talented and amazing as artists. Yeah. Oh my god, we've reached the end. Oh my god, I hope this was helpful. I hope you learned something. I hope you can use this as reference in the future if you want to understand some kind of business decision that's going on. I think about these things all the time when I see all of the articles come out about Big Hit, and I also take all HYBE. And I also take all those articles with a grain of salt, because there is a language barrier when it comes to all of this, and a lot of the English articles are relying on like either a Korean journalist helping them translate, or an other article that already posted about some news that they also want to report on, and they don't have enough information. They don't have enough of an understanding of the Korean business market and all that stuff when they report on all that news. So for one, I do take all of the articles about business events surrounding HYBE with a grain of salt. But two, I always just think about it like how I think it would fit in with the philosophy that HYBE has. And now their philosophy, like music and artists for healing, has transformed into we believe in music. And oh man, I could sit here and talk for hours about like how their philosophy and principles tie into everything they've done, and how I think it's so thoughtful, and the priority of the consumer experience and enjoyment and happiness in consuming their products or performances or whatever just is so nice. It's so refreshing to not feel like a number or just like a dollar. I don't know. I feel like I'm being treated like a human. Yeah, I'm a Big Hit stan. I don't really care. Like, it's not an insult if you call me that. I've just literally spent several hours explaining to you why I think what they're doing is so important in treating artists like humans, in treating fans like humans, in remembering that we shouldn't see this business as like devoid of humanity, and when you do it that way, you essentially self-destruct and shoot yourself in the foot. And that if you do remember that you have to treat people like humans and treat people like people, that's actually where the money actually is, and that's where you can keep growing and keep amassing more fans and connect with more people around the world and just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But yeah, all right, so that's it. That's all I have to say. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out in the comments on Twitter, whatever. But yeah. All right. Bye, guys.